Good morning, Africa and the world. Today is the second day of the fourth Southern African Oil and Gas Conference, and we are right here in Cape Town at Century City Conference Center. And we just been joined by Niall Kramer, who was a facilitator for the panel discussion yesterday on global insights for nascent oil and gas provinces. Now, do you like to share with our audience some of the highlights, key highlights of your panel discussion yesterday?
Well, the first big one was that we've been waiting too long. This industry has been ready for well over 10 years now, and we just haven't had the right policy framework with certainty, clarity, and commercial attractiveness. And that has now come through in the upstream development bill, which the regulations for which still have to be put out, but we got a promise yesterday that it's going to be there within 2 to 3 months. We even got one saying the 1st of May. So the big highlight for me is that this is potentially the biggest economic opportunity this country has ever had since mining in gold and diamonds. And that is probably the thing that could really turn this economy around. You don't get development anywhere, not ever, not once, to a high standard of living without good, reliable energy. Now, this could provide that, provided this government put the right pieces in place to make it an attractive investment destination for the A-stream players to come and reinvest. Now, many of them have moved off to Namibia, which is the new horizon. That's where everyone is going right. The opportunity in there is that our services companies can still work in Namibia and help to get we felt optimistic before, and promises have not been delivered on. However, let's fingers crossed, we could be on the edge of the opportunity here. But the trick is going to be, how do we re-attract those A-list investors to come and explore?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges on the continent, as well as in South Africa, is that if you look at the oil and gas sector, such as mining as well, is that in order for us to achieve economic growth, we need to be able to include small and medium enterprises, such as women-owned businesses, as well as young people. How do we ensure that, because we may miss this opportunity, as you say, we may miss
it again.
Yes. So how do we make sure that we include small and medium enterprises in the sector?
There's absolutely no question. We have to engage all communities, all stakeholders, but all stakeholders are not equal. And people who live in a particular community are affected in a particular way, and it's not always or necessarily a bad thing. The other stakeholders are the country, for economic development, for growth. Now, that's a hugely important piece that is not readily understood in local communities. So the first piece is that everyone needs to be engaged. It cannot be an asymmetrical conversation where, clever technical people come and spout a lot of technobabble, and people talk about their needs, and the two never meet. So they need to be ready for the conversation on both sides. So it needs to be much more professionally done and on a larger scale. My proposal is that government actually take over that role, and through institutions like the Petroleum Agency, a large national education program on what this could mean. And there are some fantastic opportunities around the world. Norway is easily the world's best example of that, which was a country that relied largely on fishing and forestry and so on until they discovered oil. They set rules in place. Now, the fish catches in Norway are still fantastic. Everything is in good repair. The economy is incredibly strong. They're sitting on a sovereign fund for $1.7 trillion, 4 times the size of the South African GDP. And just think what that could do for the South African economy if it is properly managed, if the corruption and accountability are seriously taken care of. But it is a bondseller that is simply there, and we do need to quickly take advantage of it.
2 last questions quickly. The very first one is that we seem to be having good policies, but we lack execution. how do we ensure that as a collective, perhaps private sector and government, we hold each other accountable and set up timelines and timeframes to achieve these objectives? And also, what do you have any last comments, recommendations for the sector going forward?
I think what you're saying about execution is absolutely correct. We need to execute relentlessly, ruthlessly, and a lot of the lack of we've had, and not only in oil and gas, in many sectors of the South African economy, fantastic turnaround plans, opportunities, but we just haven't executed because internally within our own departments and across government entities, there has been lack of alignment. So from my point of view, it's about less talk and less strangulation by democracy, in which everyone who has, however fact-free and irrelevant a view, is considered. And that tangles up the legal process, but the economic development for the country then simply doesn't happen, and the world charges ahead. We don't have economic growth. The rest of the world does have economic growth. And if you look at some of the countries like Guyana, which has recently become an oil and gas destination, they're sitting on somewhere around 20% GDP. It's come down, and down to 20% is a fairly impressive, what would you call it, phenomenon. Balancing all of that, we need to manage expectations. In the short term, exploration takes time. We cannot have local people developing skills for exploration. We need those people to use that window for when we have production.
That was now Kramer sharing some of the highlights and his recommendations for the oil and gas sector here in Cape Town at the 4th South African Oil and Gas Conference.
Thank you.
Now, thank you so much.
Thank you, Oliver.